Hi, Nkateko, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And how are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm recording some content for the Nkateko School YouTube channel, and we wanted to hear from a young person who is still currently in school. What are your thoughts? What would you change in terms of the current education system, if anything? Is there something that you would maybe want to improve on, or something that you think would be better if was done differently?
Well, I think one thing I would change with how we do our current school system is how we teach learners nowadays. Like most of the papers, we're still sticking to old things, old papers, old things that we aren't really based on today's current state of whatever it may be. So I think maybe change the practicality of the way they ask questions, make it more real, you know. So instead of kids answering questions in like a puzzle sort of way, it encourages critical thinking in a way it could help them in the future. One other thing I also think we should implement in all schools
Mm-hmm.
is introduction of technology. So basically, instead of textbooks, instead of books, everything should be digitized. So instead of books or whatever, we use tablets and we do our school work on those tablets, and it records all our information, our status as students, what we need to improve on, and that would help with both an introduction to technology for other kids who may not be able to or afford such technology, and that way they're also able to interact with more real world situations.
So, what you feel the textbooks are outdated now?
Yes, definitely. Um, it's almost like nowadays, let's say when you study, they already tell you can't expect what you study to be exactly as it is on the test, right? So
Okay.
it makes you think. So maybe instead of asking um, how you say one thing, they ask you to explain this thing. So it's very unpractical in my view because you try to, it's like they're trying to bring about critical thinking, but it's in a tricky type of way. Like maybe they leave out some information. Um, so make it more practical, more real.
Okay. So, you feel the education system needs to be relevant to what's currently happening?
Yes, like most of the generation nowadays can barely care about what happened 100 years ago, 20 years ago. We want to know what's happening now, what's happening in the real world. So, for instance, let's say for maths, instead of it asking you in 2002, bread was 12 rand or 5 rand, why can't you divide this by 62 or whatever? It says, hey, um, now in 2025, the tariff rate has increased. What solutions would you use to update the situation or better relieve the situation for people on a lower class?
Okay. But don't you think learning history is important so you guys can understand what happened back then, how it impacts what's happening right now? Do you think it's important for you guys to know that history, or do you think the history that's not being taught is not the right history?
You see, that's the also biggest question, because as people, we tend to believe what we grew up on. So what your mother tells you, what your father tells you, and maybe what you learn from teachers at school, from books. So in that way, when you say teach history, I think it would be a good subject to also do, but in its own way, like instead of teaching maybe one side of the history or one side of an affected area, the children are able to gather that information themselves and basically report it back to you. So instead of you telling them, oh, this happened here, this happened there, you tell them, okay, use your your tablets, go to Google, YouTube, whatever, and search up different topics about 1997, 2002, 2021, and give me information about those years and what those people went through during those years. And so I believe that way, instead of the children just learning from one point, from one person talking to them, they can go and learn for themselves. They are able to think more on how this happened, on how um, how people lived through it. So it brings about a more of a thirst for knowledge.
So you want to have a more research-based type of learning,
Yes.
where you go and research the stuff yourself and form your own opinion of what is happening.
Yes. So that way it stops from children from being more generic, the same or boring. Like for instance, nowadays I'm sure all teachers now, uh, especially the more public schools, the public schools nowadays are children are more influenced now to use ChatGPT in their papers, their tests, even their project nowadays. So instead of Googling or investigating themselves, they just tell ChatGPT to do it and it compiles all their information for them, right? So that way, when you make them investigate it themselves without bringing about this certain topic or certain mark goals, or yeah, mark goals, I guess. It brings about, so like maybe if one or two kids have the same test paper or the same presentation, you know that these ones weren't being fully serious, and you can ask them to repeat it. But also it brings about that thirst for knowledge, as I said.
Okay. What's your favorite subject at school currently and why?
My favorite subject at school currently would have to be agricultural technology.
Okay.
Yes. So during the subject, you basically learn on how to build things and how electricity works. So basically, the basics of um, most of the other subjects. So the basics of electronics, the basics of woodworking, basics of mechanics, and yeah, and the basics of agriculture itself as farming. So we are taught on how to use tools in the world now, how to think properly when building these tools, building these structures, and it's a very hands-on project. So if you are more of a hands out person, you don't like to get your hands dirty, it may not be for you. But I believe it would help in the long run when if something is broken in your house or apartment, instead of paying thousands to fix it, you could do it yourself.
Okay, Nkateko. Do you think there's a need for Africa to be connected or rather united?
Yes, I believe it's the biggest thing Africa needs as a continent right now. Um, Africa has always been one of the most looked down on countries from other countries' perspective. When they think poor, uh, uncivilized, they always think Africa. And that is due to our history. And that history as well is not taught in many schools. So it's always a bit biased. So I believe if Africa as a continent, each and every country were to band together and work within ourselves, we would be able to improve all world situations in a matter of maybe 5 years. Like, for instance, um, as a country, South Africa is very rich in minerals, and we constantly trading out of the country. We give away our gold and diamonds for scraps. And instead of doing such, we could close all trading, focus on ourselves as a people. And once we do that, it stops the gates um, for exploitation from other countries. So, and in doing that, once we stop uh, out countries' influence, countries from outside the continent
Yeah.
influence, we'd be able to focus on our government systems way more. So our parliament, our government may would be rooted out of corruption. We wouldn't be able to take bribes as easily. Um, so yes, I believe if we were to unite and share our resources inside the continent, we would definitely be able to improve a large amount.
Thank you for your time, Nkateko.
Thank you.